past our appointed meeting time of 7 p.m., so I will call this meeting of the Gettysburg Historic Architectural Review Board to order. Introduction of the members up front, that we do have a quorum present at this time. We ask you to take note of those members. They are, to my right, your left, Deborah English, the Historic Preservation Coordinator, Karen Mesher, Gettysburg Borough Administrative Assistant, and HARB Administrator and Secretary for this board. We have to note that Deborah English and Karen Mesher are facilitators of our meeting. They have the right to speak. They can ask for clarification. They may ask you to speak up, but they are not voting members of the board. The voting members of the board are Mr. Paul Witt, Mr. Brandon Stone, who's also the vice chair. I'm Gary Schaefer. I serve as chair. Suzanne Christensen to my left, and then Mr. Clem Malott. We note the absence as we start of Mr. Andrew Johnson. I'm hoping that Andrew will be joining us. And the newest member of the board recently appointed by council is Mr. Joe Edgar. He had noted when he was appointed that he would not be able to fill the seat until January of 2025. We are required to have 4 members present for a quorum. We note that we have 5 starting the meeting, and hopefully we'll be joined by a 6th. To approve the business meeting agenda for this meeting, I first have to ask if there are any additions or corrections.
I believe there will be one correction. Item D, 29 West Middle Street has been removed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That has been struck. 29 has been withdrawn. All right. Item D on the agenda has been withdrawn from this meeting to be presented at another meeting. No other additions or corrections. I'm looking for a motion to approve the modified business meeting agenda. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll note that the agenda is hereby adopted. Item B, meeting minutes from October 16th, 2024. Are there any additions or corrections to the meeting minutes that have been presented to you previously? If not, I'm looking for a motion to enter those as the official record of the October 16th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
All right.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll note that the motion passes and the meetings have been entered as the official record. Before we move to the public comment and the actual review section, I'll remind everyone that there are microphones that we are to use as the board. They are on. Please be aware of that, and we will ask those making presentations to go to the podium, and that we are on television, so just be cognizant of that. The other item is, following the Gettysburg Borough Rules for Public Meeting, we will be limiting discussion to 5 minutes per person making public discussion, unless that during the comments section, that will not apply to presenters of projects and during their review. Are there any other things that should be brought attention for the good of the cause?
Just state your name and address when you speak at the podium.
Right. So when you begin speaking, please note that Karen has asked that you speak your name clearly and your address. Item 3 on the agenda, public comment for items that are not on the agenda. That is for any general concerns that are not specific to one of the agenda items. So if you're speaking to the Gettysburg Station project, you would do that on the next item on the agenda. So is anyone here to just bring a general concern to the HARB board? All right, then we'll move to the public comment for items on the agenda. This is a section reserved for those who are not directly involved in the project itself, who will not be presenting or representing any portion of item A when it comes up for review, but want to speak to the construction proposed for 108 North Stratton Street and that large lot. So I think that many persons are here to do that. We ask that you simply indicate by raising your hand, and we'll take turns to do that. All right? Christina?
My name is Christina Heister, 1195 Baltimore Pike, Gettysburg, PA. I'd like to start by thanking HARB for providing time for us to better evaluate the visual impacts of the Gettysburg Station project and all the efforts they've made so far to get us to this point. I'd also like to give a special thanks to developer Tim Harrison for providing access to the site and all the information that we needed to conduct the analysis. Although there are 3 buildings in the proposed project, our comments reference only the railroad building, the largest of the 3, and specifically the mass and scale of the building. HARB has been considering to date a concept design, which is a useful tool in evaluating a project, but does not allow the end product to be accurately and compellingly visualized before it gets finalized. The visual analysis conducted by the National Park Service bridges the gap between concept and reality. We hope this tool, which was not previously available to HARB, provides new and useful information in your review. As we reviewed the visual analysis results, the questions we asked were: is the project visible from the street, alley, or other public space? Is the mass and scale of this new construction in harmony with the old? Does the project recognize that the buildings and streetscapes of Gettysburg are viewed within the context of Gettysburg National Military Park? Does the mass and scale of the building achieve compatibility with the appearance of the neighborhood, or will it dramatically alter its appearance? Does the building visually overpower surrounding buildings? Is the building massed to fit harmoniously into its surroundings and respect and improve local character as required to be granted a special exception for extended height? What are the impacts on nationally significant resources and visitor experience in the park? The results of the National Park Service visual analysis indicate the massing and scale of the Gettysburg Station Railroad building will have significant visual impacts to both the Carlisle streetscape and nationally significant views from Gettysburg National Military Park, particularly the Culp's Hill Tower. It will also impact the visitor experience in both the borough and the park. This structure will change forever the overall appearance of the street and is incompatible with existing neighboring structures in scale and size. The building mass does not fit harmoniously into its surroundings or improve character. It will also be visible from significant distance from within the Gettysburg Historic District. Determining that a structure of this size and mass with the visual impacts demonstrated through our analysis is appropriate will set a precedent for new construction in other areas of the Gettysburg Historic District threatening the character of the district that the Historic District Ordinance was developed to protect. We do not believe that this project is consistent with the Gettysburg Municipal Code for Historic Districts, Chapter 11, the Extended Height Special Exception, Chapter 27, or the Gettysburg Design Guide for New Construction, and therefore likely is also not consistent with the Secretary's standards for the treatment of historic properties. Our ask is a simple one. First, we respectfully request that prior to providing its recommendation on advisability for a certificate of appropriateness, the Borough Council that HARB take the time to critically review the visual analysis that's been provided. We believe that this analysis will assist HARB with consideration of the effect of the proposed change upon the general historic district, on the overall appearance of the street, the scale of the building as it relates to human size, and the compatibility of the scale and size relative to existing neighboring structures as required in the Historic District Ordinance. Second, we request that the NPS and the State Historic Preservation Office be provided an opportunity to engage with the developer and HARB in seeking mitigations to reduce the impacts to nationally significant resources within Gettysburg National Military Park. This is important because we make these requests in support of mixed-use development at this site and understand the borough's desire to increase the tax base and provide local housing. Our goal is a project designed in a manner that balances the needs of the community and the need to retain the character of the Gettysburg Historic District and park landscape and the ability to interpret the landscape from a historical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else ready to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gene Barr. I'm Vice Chair of the Gettysburg Foundation, and I'm here with Dana McDonald, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the Gettysburg Foundation. First, let me thank you for the opportunity to speak here this evening. And as someone with a history here, or history in this area of preservation, I thank you for the work that you do. I served 10 years on a borough council in the Philadelphia area, and the council had an historic district ordinance, which unfortunately we lost at one point. We became the first municipality in the history of the United States to revoke an historic district ordinance. So I have a particular care and concern and appreciation for the work that you do and for the work of preserving our critical structures in this Commonwealth. As the owner of the foundation owns the train station that our concern is, we would like to echo the concerns expressed by Superintendent Heister of the National Park Service here. Our concern is that the building, the large building in question here, would overshadow and overpower the train station. It's something that we think would have very much a detrimental impact on the culture of the area, the view sheds of the area, and we have seen the information that the Park Service has provided. As someone who has a great appreciation for what happened here in Gettysburg, it certainly would have an impact on the view shed from many different parts of the battlefield. Our ask is the same as the Park Service asked, a little bit more time to figure out how we can come to an agreeable term on here so that we maintain the character of downtown Gettysburg and that we work to make sure that the town retains its historic integrity and it continues to attract tourists and to act as a national beacon for this Commonwealth and this country. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Ed Sturley. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for the National Parks Conservation Association, located at 777 6th Street, Northwest in Washington, D.C. And we're a national nonpartisan organization that works on behalf of protecting America's national parks, including working in community here for many, many years to help protect and preserve and make sure that Gettysburg, has the resources it needs. Similarly, we are very concerned about the potential impacts to the park's view shed and the visitor experience and its alignment, of course, with the borough's historic guidelines and the Gettysburg train station. But first, I want to take a moment to really commend you as someone who works across the country, across the region in the preservation community. The work that is done here is an international model for collaboration on preservation. The work that you've done, when we work in communities surrounding national battlefields and parks, we routinely look to Gettysburg to see how you balance, modern design proposals while also keeping it with the historic character of Gettysburg. And that's why we're really hopeful that hopefully that tradition can continue here with a proposal such as this. So I wanted to give you a copy of the letter, give you the particular concerns that we have with the building. But similarly to what the National Park Service and some of the views that you saw outside in the hallway, we're concerned about the massing and the building height, particularly the view from Culp's Hill. When you go to Culp's Hill and when you look at the current design and aesthetic of the building, it looks as though essentially a big box store or a Walmart was developed downtown. It's a big rectangular, dark design structure with many windows, and we're unsure of what the lighting plan will look like. We want to see more emphasis on viewshed protection here, so that the design that moves forward doesn't obstruct or intrude upon the important viewshed here, and importantly, the visitor experience at Gettysburg. We want to see more encouragement around construction of utilizing materials and architecture that's more reflective of the rest of the 19th century landscape. That's in part of the really important visitor experience. And it's an important reason and $64 million in regional economic spending here for people who come. We know visiting the historic district is an important part of that visitor experience for people who visit Gettysburg National Military Park. And I know it's out of the purview of HARB per se, but we are concerned as well about the potential traffic impacts as well and what that would look like for the historic district and importantly the visitor experience at Gettysburg National Military Park. So we urge you, similarly, I'm sure you're going to hear this echoed many times, please delay the certificate of appropriateness until you've taken the time. There's not enough time tonight, most likely, to dig into, I've had several days to look at it, and it's still a lot to really assess and take in and look at the visual tests that were done. We're so thankful that the National Park Service did this because there is always a big disconnect between the concept and what the reality of that is. And once it's built, it's too late. So let's take that time and dig into that now. Work with the National Park Service, work with the developer. You're an international model of excellence on this, so we know if a compromise can be reached, it can be reached here. And we have some specific recommendations in the letter that you consider that we've seen that work regionally around the country, whether it's looking at lighting, well, it's looking at what the appropriate massing and height should be, how to mitigate the visual impact of that from national historic view sheds, looking at the design aesthetics, and then also even looking at the importance of windows and reflection and glare. These are all things we take into consideration because these view sheds are priceless. Having that transformational experience, that's what makes Gettysburg unique. It's not just a place to learn. It's not like any other national battlefield. The way that it's been preserved and intact and that how that development has been thoughtfully approached since 1863 is important here. So thank you so much for the opportunity to provide public comment. And thank you for your commitment to preserving, this historic resource and all the historic resources in the borough. Thank you.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Allison Lintel. I'm a resident at 212 East Middle Street in Gettysburg. I am a former housing lawyer and I teach some housing policy work as well, and I just wanted to speak on behalf of my support for the project. I don't know the developer, but I feel like they've been very responsive to some of the concerns of the community. I really feel as a resident and as someone who speaks from the perspective of, and I think the board needs to also consider the residents who live here and need these spaces to reside. And so I just wanted to offer my support in that perspective because I don't feel that that's been communicated so far in the meeting. So thank you.
Any additional?
Well, we seem to follow a tall person. I'm Sue Sipperly. I live at 314 North Stratton Street in Gettysburg. It is possible to build new structures in Gettysburg that tie into the historic period architecture that makes our streets so popular to visit and for residents to live in. The words charm, quaint, authentic, and historic feeling are often seen in descriptions by visitors and tourism media. HARB, take a look at what you have accomplished before. And I gave you 2 pages of pictures of the buildings from Baltimore Street to Steinway Avenue that you've worked with the developer and made something that fit with the historic character. And I compared that to 3 buildings I took pictures of up in Mechanicsburg near US 15 that look more like the proposed buildings here. According to the September 20th HARB minutes from 2023, HARB members offered suggestions to the design team for the developer. 2 of those things were to add decorative crowns above the top floor windows to replicate popular Italianate-style buildings throughout the town and to create warmth to the buildings, and also to incorporate less modern and more residential design elements to the 3, at the time there were 3 duplex units in the North Stratton Street structure to blend into the residential neighborhood. That hasn't happened. At the July 2024 HARB meeting, Chairman Schaefer stated that the more modern building materials on North Stratton, compared with the architecture nearby, were alien to the existing neighborhood. Little has been done to make these buildings fit the architectural character of the neighborhood. Same can be said for the building directly on Carlist Street. More effort should be made to blend in, as stated in the minutes above. The applicant's architect has repeatedly claimed that they don't want to make the project look like Disneyland, so they have foregone any real creative effort to incorporate Gettysburg style elements, other than a band of dark stone at the bottom of the walls. The examples shown above prove that the thoughtful consideration of design elements in Gettysburg can make new construction blend in and respect the historical period character that is the basis for the heritage tourism economy. They don't look like Disneyland. You've done a good job on those. There may be a small number of people who think Gettysburg should be modernized, but they are definitely in the minority. The developer and HARB need to make more of an effort to match what has been a Gettysburg look like Gettysburg. It would benefit both the project and the community. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Susan.
My name is Susan Noggle. I live at 650 Red Patch Avenue here in the borough, and I'm here to speak in support of the 1997. I took a job at the Adams County Assistance Office, and at that time we had run out of space, so we had a satellite office on Fourth Alley. And you know how once something's torn down, even when you've driven by it every day for years, you can't remember what was there. I remember enough about what was on that property at the time. Fourth Alley was part of that property. It was an alley that connected Stratton Street to Carlist Street at the time. The buildings there were old, they were run down, they were old factories. They housed pretty much nonprofit organizations who couldn't afford better space. There was the old gas station that was on Carlist Street. I'm not sure if it was vacant at the time. But it was there, it was run down. Survivors occupied the building on Stratton Street. It was very run down, wasn't really complimentary to that street at all. The newest building in that complex was the unemployment office, state agency. It was a very nondescript building. There was very little greenery. I don't remember any trees there. There was nothing there that you would consider historic, although I guess it was because it was old, and nothing very much that was worthy of preservation. And I was surprised when I looked up some of the information about the project today, that this project started in 2001. That was 23 years ago. It started with READY project, which was a state program that rehabilitated sites like this across the state. It provided funding for that. So there were attempts all along the way to develop this property. In 2008, I became a member of Borough Council. And during my time on council, which was 12 years, we had, I can remember at least 5, maybe more proposals for that site. People would come and they'd have great pictures, they'd talk about what it was going to become, and then they would go away and never come back. We could never find anybody who was willing to develop that site, and it was a challenging site to be sure. So that was 12 years on council that I spent, that we tried to find someone who would put something there that would benefit the borough. The Gettysburg Industrial Development Authority was formed. They were the ones who sold the property that was the gas station property in order to put the transit center there. We had LERTA. That was an effort by the council to go to the county and the school district and provide tax incentives. That didn't seem to work. It was a valuable property to the borough. It's in our core downtown. We came to the conclusion that it needed to be economically viable for someone to come and actually develop something on that site. And so that's why we developed the height and the incentives that went with this. There were some things that the borough wanted in return that were important to us. So we undertook that. Things like the bike trail, which we'd invested a lot of money and time and energy in already. Underground parking, you don't want to look at concrete or parking lots in a downtown. Green space, we really wanted to preserve some of that, and we wanted to maintain access to the downtown transit center. The transit center actually provided a barrier to developers because it cut off that through street of Fourth Alley, so there was no access then to Carlist Street. So there were many, many challenges with this. When it came in front of the council to vote the height and the incentives, I was one of 3 council members who voted no to the 72 feet. I really felt that I would have felt more comfortable with 60 feet. It's 72 plus for that. So, but as a result of that, we finally found a developer who would work with us, would compromise and work with us to provide something that would work for the community. I believe that proposal does pull in design elements that mimic the historic nature of the space. It's retail spaces that have a historic look as you go into them, that are ADA accessible. It has underground parking. The use of the brick, stone, and shingles mimic a lot of what we have here in the borough. Porches, balconies, bay windows, colonnades, the step-back design are all important. I think this would give an economic boost to the borough. We have very few properties that we can develop for economic development to add to the borough. The Park Service keeps making even more inroads into the borough, so we have less open space. And so I think it does fit into the character. As I walk down Carlisle Street, you're not going to see that building down Carlisle Street. You're not going to see it from the square. You will see it once you get to the train station. But I think that, all in all, I think the developer has done a very good job in working
have to ask you
with
to
the borough. Thank you, thank you.
All right. Who else wishes to speak to the proposal? Yes.
Suzanne Castile, 131 South Washington Street, Gettysburg. All I just wanted to say is I support what the National Park Service is saying. I support that it should be historical looking. It should not ruin the view shed of any of the buildings in Gettysburg or destroy the historic character of the town. So I'm just in agreeing with what the Park Service people have said without adding a lot more to it. So I won't comment on the other parts of the design, but I think we need to do what we can to keep Gettysburg historic.
Thank you.
Another speaker? Anyone else wishes to speak?
My name is Gary Castile, the husband of Suzanne. I live on 131 South Washington Street. I'm not from the Gettysburg area. I've lived here for a few years, and I will say one thing. I am in absolute shock. I come from down south, and that history needs to be protected. If we don't, it will come back to bite you. Now, what we are looking at here is New York City being brought in to a 19th century city. If that's what you want, God help you. Because what we are going to do is we're going to lose a lot of those visitors coming to town and wanting to spend time in a historic district. And when they look up 75 feet in the air with horrendous windows and god-awful design, they're going to walk away and laugh at us. My personal opinion. I have been told many, many times. Now, I have a studio in town. I have a lot of people come in there from around this country. I have monuments around this country that I have sculpted and erected in historic districts. And yet I have people coming into the gallery and they're asking one question, and this has been asked dozens and dozens of times. What is happening in Gettysburg? Why is it changing? And if it changes anymore, I will never be back. I won't even bring my grandchildren here because there is nothing to see. That is an absolute fact. Think about it, folks. Y'all need to use your Yankee mind and protect what you have here, which is an absolute gem. This battlefield, this history, is a gold mine, and you need to maintain that. Thank you.
Anyone else choosing to speak, please indicate if you wish to. This will be the last time for public comment or public participation until the end of the meeting. All right. That being said, that ends our public comment portion of the meeting, and we'll go on to the review agenda. And that first item on the review agenda, although listed under new business as item A, it's a continuation of a review that has been going on before this board for nearly a year and a half. And nothing that we have reviewed has been taken lightly. And any implication that it has been is insulting. But we'll continue with the applicant's presentation. And I'm assuming, Tim, Mr. Harrison, you'll want to speak to some of what you've heard.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Christina and Zach, and other members of the public and citizens of Gettysburg. My name is Tim Harrison. I'm from Staten Island, New York. I'm here with Charles Alexander, the project architect. I, too, take very seriously all the comments I've heard, and they're very sobering. I wasn't really present when the Borough Council decided to change the zoning ordinance in the way that allowed the 72 feet of building height in exchange for the agreement by the developer to include in the project different priorities, planning priorities of the borough. But I will say the added density that the additional height grants you really does make a big difference in making the project feasible. If you think about, let's say, to use a hypothetical example, let's say you want to build 100 units and the cost of the site improvements is $100. Well, that means each unit bears $1 of site improvements. If you can only develop 50 units, the site work stays the same. You have the same dollar, but now each of the 50 units has to bear $2 of site cost per unit. And so you see, if you can take these fixed costs, like the cost of the land, the cost of site work, so on and so forth, and spread them over additional units, eventually you get to a point where the project starts becoming financeable, where it starts to have a positive margin. In other words, the rent you're collecting isn't less than what you have to pay to the lender to borrow the money to build the project. And that's basically the economics of this. I think that's probably the economic theory, again, although it wasn't there, but the economic theory that motivated the Borough Council to propose this increase in height in the first place after other development projects had failed. The height limit as it stood before the zoning amendment was 48 feet. And what the 2018 ordinance did was allow the building to go up to 72 feet. But again, it was in exchange for the agreement by the developer to incorporate in the project specified planning priorities for the borough. So for example, if 25% of your required parking is underground, it isn't visible from the street or anywhere else, that allows you 24 extra feet above the 48 feet. That gets you to 72. If you relocate the transit center, thereby opening the site up to Carlist Street, that gets you 12 feet above the 48. That gets you up to 60. If you extend the Gettysburg Inner Loop Trail across the property, that gets you 12 feet. And if 25% of the lot, and this is not that large a lot, it's a little bit over 2 acres, if 25% of the lot is dedicated to publicly accessible green space, that gets you 24 feet. Well, That was the ordinance that existed at the time I bought the property in 2018. And so those were the parameters that I had to work with. And I could see right away I needed to get as close as I could to 72 feet. So I prepared an application. The way this works, it's by something called a special exception. A special exception is relief from a zoning requirement by the Zoning Hearing Board of Gettysburg. So that's a separate board. And it's a hearing. You have to make an application, then you have to have a hearing. And you have to prove in an evidentiary hearing that you meet the criteria for the special exception. So this criterion, these criteria were set forth in section 1524.2.W2 of the zoning ordinance, but then there are other general criteria that also require proof for a special exception that relate to general public health, safety, and welfare considerations. And all that is in the first instance, on the burden of the developer to show. So we made our application in June of 2023. The Historic Architecture Review Board made comments. The Planning Commission made comments. The National Park Service and the Pennsylvania Historic Preservation Office made comments to the Borough Council in 2018, very much like the comments tonight. Of course, that wasn't based on a specific design, but it was based on kind of conceptual, here's what big buildings could look like if this were passed. And they were actually a little bigger than ours. But at one point, the Borough Council was thinking about making the building as high as 96 feet with incentives. That's not what they did. They made it 72. So in a way, the National Park Service and the State Historical Preservation Office achieved a victory before the Borough Council. They certainly wanted those heights lower, and they got them lower. Probably would have preferred them to be lower still, maybe as low as 48 feet, but at least they went down from 96 to 72. At the Zoning Hearing Board, there were 5 objectors, and they did object to the application. There was a hearing on the 28th of June. This is the year 2023. Another hearing on the 12th of July. We couldn't get finished in the first hearing. Those were 2 late nights, if I recall. Then the board decided that we had proved our case. That we had proved our case, that we qualified for the 72 feet. We actually submitted 3 of the 4 incentives, incorporated the structured parking, the relocation of the transit center, and the extension of the Gettysburg Inner Loop were all made part of the project. We think we got pretty close to 25% of accessible green space too, but we didn't need it and we didn't force the issue. Actually, the building that we're proposing is not 72 feet. It's 63 feet because we decided we didn't want to push the envelope and we could achieve our numbers. And we knew there were many people that wanted it to be lower than 72. So we're at 63 now. When the zoning hearing, now, but you see, there were people here tonight, including the National Park Service, that did not make themselves objectors at the zoning hearing board. But in a decision on August 26th of 2023, the zoning hearing board granted the special exception. Under the Pennsylvania law, there's a certain period of time to appeal from decisions of the zoning hearing board, but no one did. And that time to appeal ran in 2023. So what the zoning hearing board did, in effect, was create the parameters, the legal parameters within which this project isn't now allowed to develop. That's the rule book that applies. and I'm not going to, I don't want to be argumentative, but there was one thing in the presentation of the Park Service that questioned, does this project, I wrote it down, meet the requirements of the special exception for additional height that are specified in the zoning ordinance? Does it meet those requirements? No, we don't think it does. We think it's inconsistent with those requirements, especially when it comes to building height. Well, that would have been a very valid objection to make on June 12th of 2023, or on, forgive me, July 12th of 2023, or June 28th. But no one was there. No one said it then. And now it's too late to appeal it. So to say it tonight, it's a little disheartening to hear for me. I wish they would have said it then. We have done our best to be responsive to the wishes of the Historic Architectural Review Board. The design of the project has changed many times. On Friday, after I met with the National Park Service, I actually walked up to the top of the tower on Culp's Hill. You can't see anything from Culp's Hill itself because of the foliage, but if you walk up to the top of the 75-foot tower, you can see the skyline of Gettysburg. It's about a mile away. The most prominent thing that you see is the Gettysburg Hotel, of course, but to my eye, it seemed pretty far away. Suffice it to say, at least one person in this room thinks it seems pretty far away. I realize that I don't say that with any authority, and my eyes aren't the greatest either. That's really all I have to say, except I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone have questions? This is part of the review agenda. So,
Thank you very
anybody
much.
on the board? Okay. Yes, Charles.
I really don't have a whole lot to say other than, I did review the material. I spent a lot of time looking at it. And I just want to be clear that none of them actually represent the building in terms of its actual color, or they were basically volumes that were created using drones to illuminate them. A lot of them showed white outlines or colored it all in white. I would point out, and these are the kind of questions I have, because I've heard a lot of statements relative to obscuring. And the reality is that this building is 20 feet, and this is, I got this from the drone operator, we're actually 20 feet lower than the hotel in terms of its height. And on top of that, you really have to kind of look hard to see, because the dorms that are located in the distance behind our site, everything's foreshortened when you're looking from the tower, are still prominent above. In other words, this building does not in any way change the kind of outline, if you want to call it that, of the Gettysburg skyline. And in fact, our building's shorter than the church tower that's located in the foreground. It actually rises above the building. So I just wanted to be clear that those images, for the sake of the discussion, have been enhanced, outlined, and in many cases, there's several images out there that have been enlarged. In other words, not images you would actually see as a person at the top of the tower. So I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure that the committee is well aware and able to look at that themselves, but I just wanted to point that out relative to the graphics that were created. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Alexander. If I may, Mr. Alexander, can I get a clarification? Can I show you this? This is one of the submissions from one of the citizens in the borough. If you look at those structures in there and look at the predominance of the brick cladding, would it be in your professional opinion that the structure that you're proposing would mimic the design styles that's being shown in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of items that are similar. You've got the ground level, transparency of the storefront. We're not white with the panels, but we're
Right.
darker. But in terms of the brick and the darker trims, I would say yes, absolutely.
Because one of the things that,
We need to use the mic if we can, because we're on TV.
okay,
Sorry.
you can take that with you if you like.
You can use this
I
one.
would like the question recorded.
Yeah, if the question was relative to the images shown on the first sheet that was prepared by Susan, the brewery building, I think is pretty similar to the kind of.
And on the second page, there's an image of our new visitor center that was just constructed last year.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. I mean, you have the same thing. We're very similar relative to that whole groundscape with the darker
I think one of the
signage and
elements-
everything. Yeah, I mean, that's.
In many of the photos that we have, the building is rendered using software. And the challenge is those are real constructed buildings. And I think the difference between what we see visually with materials that you have selected are very similar to those same materials. I just want to make sure that, in your opinion, you would expect the building to look similar to the buildings presented in those drawings.
Yeah, and I might point out also that similarly, neither of these are historically accurate in terms of how they're done. It's just that they're referential, and that's, again, what we're trying to do, is be referential without being imitative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. With no additional questions for the applicant, I'm going to proceed a little differently in that we'll become a little bit more parliamentary, in that when we have any general discussion, I would like it to be in reference to a specific motion. So that we'll frame a motion as a board, and then people can either support or oppose it or question it. I do want to enter some proposed findings.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So these visuals that people are talking about that I blew by as I ran in here, are they something I've looked at prior to this decision?
They were
What are those?
They
Does
were
anybody
the
know?
same ones that were
We've been given,
presented
okay.
to you
Okay,
from my emails.
okay.
The park superintendent was kind enough to forward that presentation.
Okay.
So those panels are the ones that we had some opportunity
okay.
to look at. They had been forwarded to you.
Okay. Yeah, just want to make sure.
The property noted as 108 North Stratton Street is located within the boundaries of the Gettysburg Historic District, and therefore comes under the review responsibility of this board for the proposed construction. The site of the proposed construction has been previously cleared of structures with the exception of the recently constructed bus transit station. That building is less than 50 years old and therefore is not protected as a contributing structure to the district. There are no contributing structures, therefore, on the Gettysburg, on that site, and especially no contributing structures to the Gettysburg National Battlefield National Register Historic District. The proposed structures and their design comes under the review right of the HARB, which is charged to give recommendations to the Gettysburg Borough Council regarding the advisability of issuing any certificates of appropriateness that are required to be issued for a project. The project has been reviewed in a hearing before the Gettysburg Borough Zoning Appeals Board and granted the special exception required for the additional height stipulated in the zoning for that site. Those are the findings that I want to enter regarding the project. The design has been visually presented. As I said, the board has been reviewing and making suggestions since prior to the summer of 2023. And the developer has been responsive to the critiques that we've offered. That being said, we have been asked to delay a recommendation for a certificate of appropriateness again. We have an application before us for a certificate of appropriateness that we have been reviewing. So I'm looking for a motion that we can put on the floor for this board to discuss as regards the action we take this evening. Does anybody wish to frame a motion?
Can I make a comment before we frame the motion? As I understand, the Historic Architecture Review Board is only responsible and has overview over the appearance of the structures. We have no responsibility for the size of the structures, the setback of the structures, the density of the property, traffic impacts, or whatever other concerns people may have. We have talked to the developer. They've asked us for recommendations, let's say brick colors. We've recommended today, they took our recommendation. There were suggestions on surface lighting, light posts around the property. We made a recommendation and they approved that, you know. So we've had no issues with them as far as what we have to do here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At this point, Gary, I would like to make a motion that we approve the project as presented and following the scope of materials and bill of materials that outlined in their defined work.
Okay. So you have recommended issuing a certificate of appropriateness.
I do.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Now, we have a motion that recommends from HARB that recommends Borough Council would issue a certificate of appropriateness for the conceptual design as has been presented to us. And then that would allow the developer to do his design development and move into construction drawings to finalize the building details. Is there any discussion?
I would like to read something from our design guide, if possible.
Is
And
your
I'll-
microphone on?
What's
Is
that?
it on?
It is, I believe so.
A little closer, maybe.
So I am in the section of the Gettysburg Design Guide under new constructions and additions. I'll submit this to the board for their record. New construction is a sign of economic health and community vitality, but it leaves an indelible mark on our community. New buildings and additions can dramatically change the appearance of neighborhoods. For this reason, new construction and additions should be compatible with historic buildings. They should not pretend to be historic or duplicate historic buildings, lest they diminish the importance of historic buildings. New constructions and additions should achieve compatibility through appropriate massing, shape, sizing, and materials. This is straight from the guidelines that have been in place for over 50 years. Our attempt to work with the developer up to this point is to honor these requirements. The shape, the size, the materials chosen have been specifically picked. And so this is, my opinion, our best interpretation of our design guides. And at this point, I will submit this to Karen.
I'll just speak carefully and briefly, but as President Susan Noggle had indicated, she and I, back in 2018, led much of the opposition to the ordinance that was going to allow this building to be built. We met and got information from Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission. I developed the drawings that you've been using on your site in the opposition, showing the worst that could happen. They came out of my office. As a result of that work, it was reduced from 96 feet to 70 feet. It was reduced in other ways where you couldn't have, you had to set back the buildings as they went up. When the developer came to us with a design, we were looking at 3 smaller buildings on the site. He heard our concerns about the buildings that sat on Stratton Street and on Carlist Street. It's been 6 years. It's been 25 years. I was actually the architect for the Parksville properties who owned the buildings there when the decision was made to do the redevelopment. So going on a quarter of a century, we've been working to try to fill this void in our town with something that would generate income and interest and support the dynamic importance of Gettysburg. Since, I think I've had people challenge me, but since 2018, I'm looking at a borough. We have undergone a pandemic. Gettysburg College has, their student enrollment is down 700 students, 25% from where it used to be. The Gettysburg Seminary is in demise. They're subdividing, getting ready to subdivide that property up. We've seen hundreds of our residences become motel rooms for Airbnb. And we have an opportunity now to provide housing of a very unique type in our downtown, right off the square. I've heard how noticeable this building is. Right after we were asked to delay our vote, I too climbed the Culp's Tower and looked out and saw a very noticeable hotel building that I don't think anybody here would imagine Gettysburg functioning without that hotel on the square and what it does for us. 6 stories taller than what the building we're doing, considering tonight is. And as Susan Noggle said, through all of this, the Park Service has removed certain properties from our tax rolls or getting ready to do so. We're in a position there, I can't make the decision to say no to this property simply because it's a bigger building than perhaps we'd like to see. And that's not a position I came to easily, but with very careful consideration, I'll be voting for this motion, understanding that Tim Harrison and his architect, Charles, will be defining and refining their design as they finalize the drawings. But as I said, I have started out in great opposition and have changed after working with this developer to see what's being proposed. If there's no other discussion, we'll look for a vote. I'll just do a roll call. The motion is to issue a certificate of appropriateness or to recommend Borough Council issue a certificate of appropriateness the council will also take our recommendation and everything that's been brought to the public's attention through these meetings and everything. They will not vote lightly on what we present to them. Paul, your vote?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes without dissent and without abstention. We move on.
Thank you. Are we going to tell them that they can't start building their building until next the Borough Council meeting? We can't, should we tell them that we can't start building their building until the Borough Council meets next month? When is next Borough Council meeting?
Second Monday of the month, is that right?
Deb?
Yes.
When's the next Borough Council meeting?
December 9th.
Yes.
December 9th?
Yes.
I imagine the audience would like to know that date.
Yes.
For everybody's reference as you're leaving, Borough Council meets December 9th.
Is that a future member back here under the clock? Is that a future member back there?
Maybe. No, he isn't. It is, but he's our neighbor. We already have our future member. That was filled last week. It's Gary's employee,
Oh, okay.
Joe
Do you
Edwards.
want to hold
Right,
on
yeah,
to
I know
this,
Joe.
or do you want me to do it and scan it? Oh, hold on. Okay. We just need to make sure we scan it.
Okay.
It's so low.
We'll do the second item on the agenda, then I'm going to ask just to take a break to get a drink of water and stuff. But we'll move to item B for review. 14 Lincoln Square, House of Bender. Is there anyone here to represent that project? We'll pass on that project and then come back to it. If anyone shows up to represent it. We'll go to 155 South Washington Street. Is Noah Rubria or anyone else?
Rivera.
Rivera?
Axe's brother, Rivera. I don't know if anybody's here.
All right. Item D, 29 West Middle Street was struck from the agenda.
So, did they say they were sending somebody for C, for 255, or 155?
We send out a notification that when the meeting time is and the agenda, and
Wasn't that guy that walked in late? That was.
I don't
no,
know.
Okay.
All right, carefully on that one, on 155 South Washington Street, I was there over the weekend and today. That marvelous Victorian railing that had been there but deteriorating is gone.
It is.
It's been totally removed. Now, it has been salvaged for restoration and installation,
I'll look
but
into
it's
that.
gone.
Okay.
And there's a new column up for the one that was rotted, and they have a temporary guardrail that's would not be safe if there's young children in that home.
Okay.
But
I'll
they
send
may
code
have
enforcement out.
temporarily removed it to rebuild it in kind.
Well, they still don't have their permit approved, so they shouldn't be doing any work at this time. So we'll send code enforcement out and post a stop work order until they go through the proper permitting process.
All right. 255 South Washington Street, all right. And you're Richard? Okay, so we're back. All right. Background information, Deb?
Sure. This project was noted as a notice of violation that started without permits. They removed historic second floor facade windows, removed the front door, replaced with top grid window lights, removed the historic tin roof and replaced with a shingled roof. Painted the siding white and the awnings black. Additional internal work was done that was not reviewed at that board. They have since then updated their scope of work, and I believe are working with code enforcement, with PMCA, with violations and work done without permits. It was first shown on the Sanborn Fire Insurance Map in 1902 as a two-story frame dwelling with a shingled roof and two rear one-story frame porches, both with a shingle roof. The permit history from 2018 to current has been a regulated rental unit, and this work for the application on your table for review.
All right. Yeah, use the microphone because you're going to be on, are you still filming? All right. Yeah, and speak to your application, what you hope to be able to do, and we'll work with questions and.
Okay. I want to introduce myself first. Unfortunately, last time I wasn't able to make it, so my business partner Patrick came in my place. We bought this with the intention.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Richard Bregenzer.
Okay.
We bought this with the intention of continuing to use it as a rental dwelling unit. When we bought it, the front, it looks like the water had broken and had been flowing in there for months. It appeared to have been unoccupied for some time. So I looked up, how to clean it out, got a dumpster permit, got in touch with Peter Griffion, rented out the back unit because it, wasn't flooded. And then, we got it mold cleaned, everything on the first floor, and then we started attacking the outside. At which point I realized that we weren't allowed to do that. So in talking to Peter Griffion, he advised that, anything that's not structural, but, I guess structural, I didn't understand what that meant. As an electrical contractor, which my wife and I are, I probably should have dug a little further, but I didn't. So I have a PA home improvement license. I have electrical licenses for the state of Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania. We're just trying to do what's right, create some housing. At this point, some of the stuff's done. We're looking to you guys to figure out how to get it right so that we can move on. It's, it's been delayed 2 months and we're still paying taxes, still paying mortgage. We're just trying to get it on track.
Okay.
So if I may, to the things that we've done so far, I'm not a professional architect, but I've renovated 30 or 40 homes. My father's a carpenter. The original door, if you look, it's got like the 3-tier translite. It was a 60s door. The awnings are probably 50s, 60s. They retained but got painted. The neighbor's house is vinyl siding and asphalt shingle. So we tried to retain the existing aluminum. We tried to retain the existing aluminum just for cost purposes. It was white. We painted it back white because the white there was dirty. Black was a design consideration on our part. We thought it looked good against the white. And then the shingles, we changed those because that's what the neighbor had, and it also needed a new roof. As far as the windows go, I understand that there's a historical window that you guys prefer. They're already changed on the top floor. They have not been thrown away.
Questions of the applicant? Paul, do you want to start off? Or Brandon?
More of a statement. So when we met in, I believe, September, we thought we came to a resolution on this property. We sent it to Borough Council for approval, and Borough Council then remanded it back to us for re-review, pending some findings that were unavailable to us at that time. I've yet to see what those findings are.
They were issues with some of the internal construction modifications that.
So they were
permitted.
PMCA-related code, but my understanding, Clem, you have not had an opportunity to be inside the property, correct?
I have not been inside the house, but I'm familiar with it from the outside.
Okay. So I'm a bit confused what council determined as a remandable need to send this back to our review when it doesn't appear the building inspector has been able to get into the property, and the request of HARB is to re-review this project.
I think that was part of the issue, that they weren't allowed to do the inspections required to move the project forward.
Okay.
Is it okay if I say something, sir?
Sure.
So I went back and forth through email. It was actually a bit difficult for me to pin down kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg. So I talked to John at zoning. If you see on the building there are 2 meters. One was an old one was in use. It is zoned multi per John, which is why we have that into 2 units currently. Nobody has asked for access from PMCA. I was told that before we get our permit with PMCA, which would grant them access, we needed to get HARB done. But before HARB got done, I needed to talk to zoning. But zoning said that I needed to talk to HARB. So, I went through a bunch of different emails. I'm like, please, can I do something to start with someone? So it would be my plan to ideally get something resolved here and then go to PMCA for my permit.
I think what happened, sir, is fundamentally your property is in a historic district. And as such, even if it wasn't in the historic district, you would still need to pull building permits to do work on it. And so the absence of you pulling any permits at all short-circuited the processes. So you literally got to the point where you were in the middle of your project before you actually started your project, if that makes any sense. And as such, these guys don't have the appropriate paperwork to give to him. He can't get in to see you because he doesn't have that piece of paper. And so now we are caught in this loop that we have to somehow resolve.
And they also mentioned 3 units, and that was only permitted for 2.
And I believe that was his business partner misspoke that night under what was an hour of questioning. Your partner said that you were trying to convert the property into 3 units. And in visiting the property, what I think he meant to say was the front house was to be a duplex, and the rear property was the 3rd property. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think at the time, it was interpreted by all parties, you were trying to turn the front building into a triplex. And that brings a lot of building code questions.
I think my business partner cried that night, which is why he wasn't here, so.
So I wanted to give you a little context of what's going on. We still have some fundamental problems. You removed an original roof on the property and replaced it with an asphalt roof. You removed all the upper windows in the building and left the original windows on the lower part. And so I think fundamentally at the time, the board discussed what to do, and I feel because the council sent it back to us, I think we need to revisit this discussion. But I'm not sure which way to go. Do you have any guidance, Gary?
Is this the only property you own in Gettysburg? Just like.
In Gettysburg, yes.
Mm-hmm. And multi-zoning isn't a thing. I mean.
I'm not sure what that is.
Well, you were saying multi-zoning, or I didn't understand what you meant by that. You said it was multi-zoned, or?
No, ma'am, I spoke with John from zoning.
Okay.
I don't know if I misspoke, but.
Yeah. I don't know we have something called multi-zoning, just curious.
If
Okay.
I can interject here, I think, and I can't speak for the zoning officer, but it's my understanding that they want to turn the front house, which is a single-family dwelling currently, into a duplex. I believe that the zoning officer probably in reference to that said it's permitted in that zoning district.
Right, that makes sense.
That does not give them permission to go ahead and start the work.
Right.
And conversion to a duplex does not circumvent the permit process.
Right.
So that's why we're caught in this never-ending loop right now.
No, Brandon, I don't have a well-thought-out and reasoned approach, except that I think I am willing, I would be very willing to approach the project as repair and restoration of the 3 windows closest to the street on the bottom, the one on the side and the 2 on the front, and then the upper windows to be either modified or restored to 2/2 windows also. Actually, I don't intend to put Deb on the spot, but when Dave English redid the Gettysburg Academy building, he actually built grids out of wood and put them in the windows, which were replacement windows, because the original windows were gone. So it's always marveled at me, because everybody assumes they're the original windows, and they had a custom wood insert originally.
We still have some original windows.
Right, and while I don't want to propose that as being something that can be done frequently, if we could do, a wood grid that went inside to replicate the mullions downstairs on those front windows, then we'd be getting back to a very considerable design element that's been restored.
Oh, I'm not comfortable with that.
All right.
I am not. The vinyl windows that are upstairs, I would say, are builder-grade quality windows, and I feel that a unification of the windows in the building would be my desire. And in count,
So you'd accept that on the 7 windows we see there?
I would like to have new, better windows put in and those windows removed.
For 7 or for 5?
By my count, there are 13 windows. The applicant has replaced all of the windows in the house except the lower ones on the first floor. The rear windows have been replaced, third-story windows have been replaced, and my concern is the inconsistency for the structure. And I am of the opinion, I would like to see the windows be all the same. If either a Provia Series 600 with the simulated divided light, an Anderson 4000 with a simulated divided light, or a Pella that has a simulated divided light. But I am of the opinion now that unifying the appearance on the house would serve both the owner, because the value of the property will be much better with replacement windows, and it would provide a consistent, uniform look for the property.
Didn't we do that and then say that we would accept the not replacing the roof if that was agreeable?
If I recall.
We haven't got to the roof yet.
Okay.
So I would, this is just, my recommendation is all of the windows in the building need to be the same. And while he has replaced 13 windows on the second story, I believe he needs to replace them with matching windows. There's windows in the back that he replaced too.
Well, 12 altogether on 2 stories.
It doesn't have the back of the house as well.
Okay.
He replaced all the windows in the back of the house, at least in my survey of the property. And so I would also recommend removing the awnings to bring up the front of the house. I noticed many of the window trims around the windows. It could be that you got a work stoppage in the middle of doing the windows.
They're not flashed.
They're not flashed, they're not finished, and I really would, I would like to see historic trim put back around the windows, a high-quality simulated divided light window put into the house. And at the end of the day, you will have the value of those windows in your property. At least that is my suggestion to the board.
All right.
Now, the Borough Council had an issue, they wanted to take off that roof, the new roof.
I don't think the council actually stipulated what they had an issue with, other than there was building code irregularities discovered in the process that required our re-review.
That's correct.
So, but it does bring up the roof. And so I think, at least my opinion on it, I am uncomfortable making the applicant remove a $30,000, $25,000 asphalt roof and replacing it with a $50,000, $40,000 metal roof.
Who said that?
That is what is being suggested that we decide. And so, does anybody on the board want him to rip off that asphalt roof and put a metal roof back on? Or put an asphalt or a metal roof over top of the asphalt roof?
As opposed to a public flogging.
Yes, I'm trying to make a compensation here.
You're probably like, what the heck is going on here? I just put a new roof on. But like, taking that roof off was the worst thing that you could have done because it was such a beautiful old roof, right? It didn't look pretty, but I would be okay with keeping the roof and replacing the windows. Although I'm not concerned about the windows in the back, personally. I mean, the windows on at least those two sides to me.
Are we just talking about the windows on the second floor? Or I guess there's three options. Are we talking about street facing for the whole house? Or are we just talking about the second floor? Or are we talking about all of the windows in general? Because the first floor are original.
Mine is all windows in general, to allow you to replace out everything in the house with a newer, high-quality window, unifying the entire structure. One of my concerns is, right now you can see perfectly an example. So your lower windows are the original windows with the storm windows on them. Your upper windows are brand-new windows that have dual-paned argon-filled glass inside them. You don't need storm windows on them, and you're most likely not putting storm windows on. So now in the front facade of the house, what you have is very fractured appearance on the property. And my hope right now is to allow him permission to, since he already ripped out the majority of the windows in the house anyway, let's put in new windows and make the house look unified.
Were you planning on replacing, how many windows are original? Or how many windows did you not touch?
I didn't count that number, but I did count the ones that we did touch, and it was 13.
Yeah, I think he has 4 original left.
And were you going to replace those were you going to replace those front two, bottom?
The intention was to, once we got the permit process down, I mean, the upstairs unit is almost completely finished. There are 2 separate entrances. So assuming we got all that squared away, assuming we got the second floor squared away, we were going to try to rent it, get the property to cash flow so that we could afford to do the bottom. We were hoping to get that in a separate second project, like the whole first floor in general.
Can we not do that? Can we not deal with it separately and then, or not?
I would like to have just a commitment.
Because we can extend that, we
could write the motion such that we give him permission.
We give the permission, he can phase it.
And he can phase it in.
Okay.
I mean, if can I do all the street facing now and all of them later?
I would like all of the vinyl windows that were gone in the second floor.
No, I mean, of course, everything that's in the second level that's being lived in, but I could do the street facing bottom as well so that people don't have to see unmatched windows while I'm waiting on funding to do the rest of the bottom.
I think we would word the motion that you would have permission to replace the windows, and
you could do that in your construction schedule, whether you do it upstairs, downstairs, front, get it rented.
Yes.
You know.
And if I submit a window,
once you start, you have a year, and you could probably get an extension.
Okay.
As long as you're in process, the approval would require replacing all of them eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
What we're going to recommend is all new windows throughout, it sounds like.
Okay.
And you could work with Deb if you have a window in mind, she can communicate with the board. We have a series of windows that actually meet HARB requirements. One of our former customers were here. He knows more about windows than probably anybody in this room. So I think, in my mind, though, right now, it allows for us to get past this impasse. It allows him to get a certificate of occupancy or appropriateness. It allows him to get his building permit, which allows him to start moving things forward.
Does that make sense to you, Clem?
It makes good sense, as once we get the application for building permit, then we'll look at interior things which aren't under the purview of the board.
Correct.
But we know that there's existing issues that need to be addressed.
And just to reiterate, this discussion has nothing to do with the inside of the building. So you have to meet all current building code, UCC requirements, egress, access, all that kind of stuff. So that is when he gets an opportunity to come in and see stuff.
This will give you direction on what to include in that permit as far as the windows.
Okay. When you guys are done with me, you're going to throw what's left to Clem? Is that what you're saying?
So just to reiterate, right now what I am asking for is replacement of all the windows in the house, and I would like to see, I would like to have more of a wood trim around the windows versus an aluminum vinyl wrap. So that it actually.
Would you accept alternate, like a plastic extruded?
PVC, something, but I would like to have the windows cased out versus just a basic aluminum wrap around the windows. And right now, your current windows you never finish that step in the process.
Are you okay with like an AZAC casing?
I am absolutely okay with AZAC casing. I think new modern windows in there with the simulated divided light and casings on the outside will make your house look the best house in the street.
2/2?
2/2.
No,
and I'm not even concerned about the front door, to be honest with you. I think the door is acceptable.
The other one was not a period door.
And in your previous application, you were asking about putting a mailbox on the front of it. You had a number of other smaller requests, and I don't think that's necessary.
So you want to frame the motion so we can move on?
Yes. Do we need to do
We need a findings of fact.
findings of fact first? Do you have a finding?
Okay. Let me do that.
Do you have one?
All right, the structure, let me find a clean,
I got a sort of clean one right here, but these are for yours.
do you want to do it?
Yeah, sure. But I put a note down in 1902. The structure located at 255 South Washington Street is located within the boundaries of the Gettysburg Historic District and thus comes under the review right of this board. It is a sensitive building as defined by the Borough excuse me, of Gettysburg Code of Ordinance being over 50 years old. The building is a contributing structure to the Battlefield National Registry Historic District with a well-documented history within the Borough of Gettysburg, first appearing in the year 1902. It is of moderate architectural integrity with some original features. However, it should be noted, undocumented changes to the building have impacted the uniformity. The proposed work is considered a major project with alteration to the existing building, including the replacement of new windows in the building and the installation of an asphalt roof. It is viewable from the public ways of South Washington Street. The Secretary of Interior Standards and Gettysburg Design Guide both play a crucial role in our historic preservation process, and please consider the following items. The historic character of the property should be retained and preserved where possible. New additions, exterior alterations related to new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. Nor should distinctive features, finishes, or construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize the project shall be preserved when possible. At this point, if there is no further questions regarding this proposal. Do I hear a motion recommending the Borough Council we approve the application as presented? And at this point, I will make a motion to recommend a certificate of appropriateness for 255 South Washington Street, which will require the replacement of all windows in the house with upgraded, simulated divided light windows with a 2/2 grid pattern. The windows should be cased out with either wood or some comparable PVC AZEK equivalent. And I recommend removing the awnings on the building. The asphalt roof will stay as it is with the approval to have it installed.
But you didn't require that.
I did not require that.
Wait a minute, repeat that last part after the AZEK casing.
AZEK roofing, and then, I'm not sure how to word the asphalt roof. Their applicant's request is to install an asphalt roof, I would say.
Allow the installed asphalt roof to remain.
Allow the installed.
Certificate of appropriateness would allow the installed asphalt roof to remain.
How about the door?
And we would allow the front door to remain as well.
All right, we have a motion. Was there a second?
I'll second that.
Clem seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So our recommendation will go to Borough Council. I don't see you not getting a certificate of appropriateness approving this work, but you actually have, that means when your permit is issued, you can do it.
Sure.
The certificate of appropriateness is not a permit to do the work.
It is
And
not.
to be clear, there's 255 and 255R. These impact 255 only.
Only 255. You didn't touch any of the windows in 255R.
I didn't, but it was painted.
That's fine.
Okay.
Paint isn't considered a permanent change.
Okay. Well, there's still awnings there. That's why
There's
I
still
asked.
awnings. That's up to you. The recommendation is to remove the awnings.
Okay,
But
but that would
not
not affect the rear
required.
building. That's just the,
Yeah.
okay.
The one thing I do want to clarify, Clem, so he currently has a work stoppage notice on the building. What process allows that to be lifted for him? Is it the Borough Council approval? Is it the PMCA submission?
Once he obtains a state-required building permit, which comes after council approves and the borough issues their permits, he submits to our office for permit approval for everything that you intend to do. If you're trying to make a duplex out of it, make sure that's on the permit. It's right now not permitted. We look at it as an existing single-family home. Discuss everything that you're going to do and what you have done with the electric as well, because we've noticed that the electric's been tampered with, that there's no seal on the service. Just kind of do everything you need to do to get yourself caught up.
Yeah, be transparent.
So, yeah, very transparent. Obtain your approvals from Borough Council, from Borough staff, then submit your building permit application to Pennsylvania Municipal Code. Our office is down here on York Road, just outside of town, and or you can submit online.
So just to reiterate, the Borough Council's next meeting is December 9th. At that meeting, they will approve, they will give Deb the okay to give you a certificate of appropriateness. At that point in time, you can start filling out your paperwork, but you cannot work on this property until that work stoppage is lifted. So
Understood.
just make sure you have your timing done appropriately. But this looks like it at least gives you a path forward to actually get it usable.
Appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wes, I'm just going to make sure you're not here to represent either 14 Lincoln Square or 155 South Washington Street. We had skipped over them. So now I'm going to item F. Item F, G, and H are projects from my office. And Ruben Klein, Mr. Klein is here for the item F.
Okay.
I just have one question on that motion. Did you say the awnings?
I
were part of it?
recommend the awnings be removed.
Okay, but it's not,
I didn't want to make it a requirement for him.
Not required, but he's
But
recommending.
you don't need to put in the motion that, you can just
Okay.
recommend the awnings be removed and
Okay.
leave it at that.
all right.
Is that rain?
It is. They're calling for 18 inches up at my house tonight.
What?
Yeah, we're under a winter storm warning on top of the mountain. There's a thunder snow right now.
What
I thought you live
mountain
in
is
Cole
this?
Park.
I do have a house up
Yeah,
in
we
Somerset
just had
County.
80.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
long way home, Gary.
Yeah. So as Gary gets over to the podium, Deb, can we move to item F? Because I'm going to try to get out of here in 50. Gary, can you stay at the podium, please?
Pardon?
Can you stay at the podium so we can have you on mic?
All right, but I may have Ruben come up. It's his project.
Well, then maybe Ruben go over the podium.
Is he excusing himself, recusing?
Yes.
Think I can do this in 15 minutes?
Let's
But
do
you're
it.
right, we'll be
yeah.
ready here. So they'll introduce the project, give the background, and then ask questions of you.
All right.
Please proceed, Ms. English.
Thank you. I have a project here, COA 24-0094, which is a major project located at 217 North Stratton Street. And it is for a two-story, 10-foot deep addition to the rear of the existing residence. History, it's first shown on the 1912 Sanborn Fire Insurance Map as a two-story frame dwelling with a shingled roof, front and side wrap single-story frame porches with tin roof, and two rear single-story frame additions with a composition roof. Permit history from 2018, construction of an accessory structure, 2019, accessory structure and stormwater. This current application, and in 2022, replace existing metal roof on main house and porch with an AB seam standing seam roof. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to give us your presentation?
Yeah, my name is Ralph Ruben Klein. I reside there with Kate Crandall and my daughter Becca. It's our family home, and Becca's going to need a bigger bathroom someday. She's going to push us out. We have two dogs that take up a lot of space in the laundry room, and I walk in and out of the back door all the time, and I want more space there. So it just pushes back, puts a laundry room, no change of access to the house. Doors all stay the same. It just pushes back 10 feet with a two-story addition, laundry room downstairs, and then upstairs to put another bathroom, which attaches to the largest bedroom, our bedroom in the house, to have a secondary bathroom.
Could you go to Gary's elevation views, please? Maybe you can maximize your screen and just scroll down. Thought they were included in there.
I always love that house.
It's
So cute.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
On the document, it appears to be page 11.
All right, let me see. We have several things in here, I think.
There we go, thank you. No, maybe not. Oh, no, that's it right there, perfect. Yeah, if you can scroll down just a little bit more. Gary did a very nice job of sort of presenting this item. So your ask right now is really speaking to the lower portions where you are adding a 10-foot addition off the rear of the building.
When you say lower portions, two-story.
The lower section of the screen right there, so this.
Yes, yeah.
The one question I did have for Gary was in the first drawing right there, how the roof intersects with the building there. I think the second drawing is a more accurate rendering where the gable is tying into the back plane of the roof. Is that correct? Or the second?
The one on the left, the roof steps up because to use that as a bathroom, to push it to the side, we originally considered stepping it down, but we don't want to try to link in the same plane. We were stepping down, but that made the sidewalls unusable in the bathroom. It made it very small. So we are stepping up.
Oh.
We are stepping up about 8 inches or a little more, just so there's a break and we can flash the roof you really won't see it from.
But your intention is not to reconstruct the roof so it ties into the intersecting gable.
Can I
You're just
answer
gonna
that?
bring up the back a
Can I
little.
answer this?
Please.
Yeah. So, as noted in the introduction, I have a brand-new standing seam metal roof on this house right now that's like a year old, and I don't want to mess with it.
You don't want to tie into that.
I don't want to tie into it. I don't want to mess with that. So going above it will allow me to make a little bit of an overhang, flash it, and keep it back. I wanted to step it down to begin with, but as Gary said, the head height's not significant enough, and I think it'll actually be structurally better to be above it for water runoff, et cetera. But it will be a completely separate roof, just stepped up about 8 inches.
It was difficult to see what that meant in the drawing, so that makes a lot of sense to me now. And your material choices on this are going to be?
I'm gonna use like a hardy plank board. I'm gonna paint it the same color as the main house and try to blend it in as much. I don't want it to stand out at all.
Suzanne, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Clem? Paul? Well, if there are no questions at this time, I would like to review the proposed findings of fact. The structure at 217 North Stratton Street is located in the boundaries of the Gettysburg Historic District and thus comes under the review right of this board. It is a sensitive building as defined by the Borough Gettysburg Code of Ordinance being over 50 years old. The building is a contributing structure to the Gettysburg Battlefield National Registry Historic District with a well-documented history within the Borough of Gettysburg, first appearing in the year 1912. It is of moderate architectural integrity with some original features. However, it should be noted undocumented changes to the building's windows have impacted its uniformity with at least 4 different window types being observed. The proposed work is considered a major project with alterations to the existing building, including the construction of a new 2-story rear addition, and it is viewable from the public ways of North Stratton and East Water Street. The Secretary of Interior Standards and Gettysburg Design Guide play a crucial role in our historic preservation process. I would like the board to consider the following. The character of the property shall be retained and preserved. Removal of historic materials and alterations in features and spaces that characterize the property shall be avoided. New additions, exterior alterations related to new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Finally, distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a historic property shall be preserved. At this point, if there are no further questions regarding this proposal, do I hear a motion recommending Borough Council approve the application as presented?
I move we recommend to Borough Council that the application be approved as presented.
So moved by Clem
I'll second.
and second by Suzanne. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second by Suzanne. All in favor? Check. If you can hand this down to Karen. I'm trying something new. I'm going to give you it in writing.
Oh, that'd
Thank
be
you.
awesome.
Okay, next on the project list is 64 West Middle Street. I assume, Gary, you're going to represent that property for the owner? Deb, if you could bring up the scope of work and history.
Thank you. This is for project COA 24-0095, which is a major project located at 64 West Middle Street. Restoration from fire damage to allow the replacement of severely damaged front windows on the 3rd floor with historic windows from the east and west side of the buildings and replacement windows on the west side to be used as needed. This project was first shown on the fire insurance maps in 1886 as a 3-story brick structure with a rear 2 and 1-story addition, all with shingled roofs. Permit history from 2018 to present. It has been a regulated rental unit, and this application for window replacement. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. Gary, would you like to do a presentation?
I'll make it very quick. It's simply asking, everything's going to be replacement in kind, but it's simply asking for permission, and I don't know what pictures Deb can bring up, but basically, on the east side of the building, there are historic windows that can be relocated up to the third floor where the greatest damage was, and all the historic windows, the Victorian with the frame and the colored glass, has been removed and smashed out. This side is the east side, and you can see like the two windows there are in a stairwell entrance to the second floor. We'd like to use those and perhaps the one with the air conditioner in it. That is if you keep going through that, you'll see that if you go down, you'll see how minimally noticeable those windows are in that east side.
They're the same size.
Yes. Now, these are on the west side, and they're actually non-functional inside, so if we need them, that would be the second source, would be to take some out of the west side, but they are more visible. This is just a shot to show you, despite the damage in that house, some of the woodwork and stuff remains, and the intent of the owner is to restore it all.
From the scope of this project, though, the front of the building has considerable gingerbread, the corbels, is the intent that you're going to replace those as well?
That crown mold is to be rebuilt, and we're going to replicate it based on copying the elements on the east side. The third floor is the most heavily damaged.
So, and again, this is somewhat out of scope of what you're asked, is just my curiosity. One of the things in the fire report of this building was, it was several units on that third floor, but they had one common ceiling space in there. So when one unit caught on fire, the entire sort of third floor just went up. Is the plan to re-engineer, redesign the building to be multiple units like it was previously?
It went basically what they were referring to when we get up in there, and we were in the third floor, though it's a little intimidating to get up there. The third floor, the roofs, as they built on the back, they didn't separate attics.
Right.
So the fire raced above the ceiling and spread quickly that way. Although it will only be one unit on the third floor, they intend to try to accomplish more fire separation of the units. The other thing is that the building, in restructuring it, the building is going to be sprinklered.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
It actually is. We couldn't get the minimum safety scores without sprinkling it. It was just too big a building.
Is it 8 unit? Is it 6 unit? How many unit is it?
I think it's actually only 5.
Okay.
It was only one on the first floor. The first floor was one huge unit.
And those floors
originally,
weren't
it's going to be
damaged, or-
2. It's going to be 2, 2, and 1, so 5 units.
And the first and second floor, were they damaged when they tried to put the fire out?
There's really heavy damage in the oldest part of the building.
Okay.
There's some new additions on the back where the apartments are not damaged at all, really. They're vacant because they have to redo certain utilities and everything.
I think it's an incredible project. It has one of the finest examples of Solomon Power steps in town. The front steps in this building are just spectacular. The window wells to the basement are cut granite. Like, it is really, it makes me very happy that you're working on the project and the owner is restoring it. So at this point in time, Clem, do you have any questions for Gary?
I have none.
Paul?
No questions.
Suzanne? If it's okay, I would like to read the proposed findings of fact. The structure at 64 West Middle Street is located in the boundaries of the Gettysburg Historic District and thus comes under the review right of this board. It is a sensitive building as defined by the Borough of Gettysburg Code of Ordinance being over 50 years old. The building is a contributing structure to the Battlefield National Registry Historic District with a well-documented history in the Borough of Gettysburg, first appearing in the year 1886. It was destroyed by fire on March 12, 2024, and it was of high architectural integrity with many original features and few undocumented modifications. The proposed work is considered critical with alterations to a sensitive building, including the major restoration of a structure as outlined in the submitted scope of work, specifically repurposing original windows from less visible location, restoring the front facade, and addressing a greater community good by rehabilitating a condemned building. The proposed work is viewable from the public way of West Middle Street, and the Secretary's Interior Standards and the Gettysburg Design Guide play a critical role in our preservation process. Please consider the following. The historic character of the property shall be retained and preserved. New additions, exterior alterations, and related new construction shall not destroy the historic materials that characterize the property, and distinctive features and finishes and construction techniques and examples of craftsmanship that characterize the historic property shall be preserved. At this point, if there are no further questions regarding this proposal, do I hear a motion recommending Borough Council approve the application as presented?
I will.
Suzanne, motions? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There is a second, and I do want to have one point of discussion. In Gary's application, he is asking to use replacement windows in those side windows that aren't completely visible. We didn't really sort of discuss that, but that is inherent in his application. He knows the kinds of windows that are going to be available, so I leave that to the owner and his discretion.
And the back additions already have new windows.
Correct.
That are 1/1, so.
Okay, so if everyone's okay with that, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Suzanne, did you second that? Clem did.
They did at the same time.
Okay,
Paul.
I'll give it to Paul.
Sorry, Clem.
All in favor? And then if you can hand that down to her. So now we are on to the last item of the evening. This is item H, 150 Carlisle Street, City Mart. Deb, can we get the background information, please?
Sure. This is for project COA 24-0093, 150 Carlisle Street. The exterior renovations and second floor rear addition, removal of a rear shed, remodel of a basement stair enclosure. The metal panels on the front portion will be restored and repainted. Infill of the building's southwest corner footprint. The history of the building is not shown in our current inventory of Sanborn Fire Insurance maps, as it doesn't meet our historical.
It's not.
No.
Okay.
The permit history from 2016, they had a change of occupancy. In 2018, a change of occupancy as well. There was signage, a subdivision plan, kitchen upgrade, roof repairs, and a rear accessory structure. And then in 2022, 2023, and 2024, they had amusement device license.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you, Brandon.
No, thank you. But one thing I would like to comment, Mr. Witt did point out earlier that in his recollection, it was a Citgo gas station.
Phillips 66.
Phillips 66 gas station
Okay.
in the early 70s.
Yes.
So we don't know exactly what year it is, but it is a commercial gas station.
Yeah.
Of course, which is obvious in this architecture, but it is certainly, it's very close to being that 50 years old. So at that point, Gary, I would like you to present your proposal, if you would, and maybe Deb, if you could bring up the elevation that Gary sent on November 5th. I think that probably speaks to the project.
There were a couple of buildings. There's one on,
Actually, could
this
you
what you
do
want?
the PDF, the first one, 150 Carlisle? And I believe it's elevation, street, it's the first one,
Which
top
one?
row.
Up here?
Yes.
there were a couple of buildings built in Gettysburg that were international style.
Yes.
Both of them, actually, that I'm thinking of, the one on York Street that's now offices for mental health group that they came back and did away with the international style and made it kind of a neo-traditional building.
Yes.
This one still has a lot of its international style flavor on the front. It was a small international style gas station. The proposal is to, it says clean wash, but it'll be to clean those metal panels and then repaint the panels. They're actually in pretty good shape. It's a clad metal building from the one-story portion, particularly on the east and the north. We'll clad the building, keep the building clad, in the metal, and then paint it with a paint to protect those panels and restore them. The back is cinder block, and it's going to be covered. We'd like to find an aluminum siding, that it would just be an 8-inch exposure aluminum. That's much harder to find. If we don't find aluminum, it'll be an 8-inch smooth surface alternate siding, not vinyl. And that would be on the north side and the south side. The rear will be painted block, painted CMU, much like it is now. There's a partial second floor on the building. We're going to put
Can you leave that?
a rear second floor. The project's been hanging around for many years, and just with some financing issues and everything, it's finally step one to begin to restore it, and then most likely a later addition on the south side toward the new apartment building that's to the south.
Do you have a current picture?
This is just a massing to try to clarify where that addition's going to go. The front will stay one story. The original garage bay doors are storefronts now. Everything's been filled in. But again, it was one of the old service stations, one of the earliest in town.
I think I have a picture of it somewhere.
Really?
Yeah. There's no way I could find it in my 33,000 pictures.
No.
But,
Well, if you do.
The last couple of pictures on that.
Thank you.
The last couple.
That's probably the
No,
best.
in the back, if you
Oh.
see the pictures that are in the back.
He's run into certain issues. The floodplain has increased, and that's impacting the right side. And some of his earlier plans were on the north, but it has the creek in the causeway. And now they show that creek coming out of that as part of the floodplain, and he can't really build in that. So his options keep changing. We've been working with him since 2015, and finally have what looks like a realistic, smaller project to start with.
Yeah, I noticed that it is actually set out in its own, in the new zoning as part of the revitalization district, which I was curious at how that impacts new construction on the project. And
He talks about taking advantage of it, but I'm hoping that's taken out of the zoning myself.
Okay.
That was one of the things that the people opposed to the Gettysburg Station project had renderings of a tall building on this site and how awful it would be.
Okay.
They created.
It is specifically called out on the zoning map. This lot is targeted for revitalization.
And the one behind it where the storage, self-storage is,
Yep.
that you see there is called out
Everything in that part of town, yes.
for more intense development, yes.
So your choice of materials for the addition, can you restate?
The materials from the addition will be on the second floor facing east And on the north and south sides, they're going to be 8-inch exposure siding, either a cement board or an aluminum panel siding.
Can you go to
The rear
elevation
is going to be just painted black.
And that, I think, was what was confusing me.
So you see that side shows the siding.
Yes.
There's a little bit on the south side that doesn't have the metal panels. It's already a stucco on block. We're going to restore that. The north side will have a clean white siding, just kind of a smooth metal, simple siding. The comments in the review said, are the materials representative of what's around? The building next door uses a siding, the new one has a mixture of siding, stucco, and brick.
That was the one question I had for you, and this is just an architectural question. Because the gas station is a very distinct architectural style, it almost seems like putting a traditional siding material on it is sort of giving it a split identity. And the Hardy, for example, makes Hardy panel that you could panelize the building very similarly, would have a more unified modern appearance, because the front facade of the building, even in sort of all the years of use, is still very, it looks modern.
We'll look at that. That's actually a very good idea, potentially good idea for panels. We were trying to get the metal aluminum siding just to pick up the metal siding that's on there.
Right.
And it doesn't have a lot of traditional detailing.
Yep.
It would just be flat
If
aluminum.
you recall the Lincoln building on Baltimore Street, they came in a while ago and they were looking to do some form of panels. And they make a grommet stainless steel channel that is designed to integrate with the 4 by 10 foot Hardy panel sheets. And they are very cost effective. And I think the idea of panelizing the building as it integrates with the original gas station, I would have to admit, when I first looked at this, Gary, the second story abruptness to the front facade of the building, that got me. And then I went down to the mental health building. It was funny that you mentioned that building, because that building is what stood out to me as being very comparable into what you're proposing. But
Except that one went very traditional with the crown moldings and stuff.
I think as the architect, I think you have some latitude to embrace the architecture that the station has right now. And I think the unifying of the entire building with a cladding material, I think would make it really be unique. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think we would try to carry it on the west, the top elevation there, but we would do it on the others.
I think you might find it'd be more cost effective than all of your other material choices too. But at that point, that was the only question I had. I guess we're back to you. We have so many tonight. Do you have any questions for him?
Nope.
Suzanne?
No.
Oh, my God.
This is of the hotel.
Oh.
Don't lose my place. I'm still digging.
Oh, my. Boy, that's crazy. I'm sorry. It's just, I just saw we actually have the photo of that in the design guide.
Mm-hmm.
From the front
Of a photo of that when?
It's actually the hotel. She apparently has a collection of all the old buildings in town on her phone. Okay, Suzanne, if you don't have any questions. Clem, do you have any questions of the applicant? So at this point, if there's no other questions for the applicant, I would like to read the proposed findings of fact. The structure at 150 Carlist Street is located within the boundaries of the Gettysburg Historic District and thus comes under the review right of this board. It is a sensitive building as defined by the Borough of Gettysburg Code of Ordinance being over 50 years old. The building is a contributing structure to the Gettysburg Battlefield National Registry Historic District and is of limited architectural integrity, and despite alterations still maintains its mid-20th century commercial essence. The proposed work is considered a critical project with alterations to an existing building, including the new construction of a two-story rear addition and a restoration of existing exterior facade. The property is viewable from the public way of Carlist Street and the intersection of West Water. The Secretary of Interior Standards and Gettysburg Design Guide play a crucial role in a historic preservation process. Please consider the following elements. The historic character of the property shall be preserved and retained where possible. New additions, exterior alterations, and related new construction shall not destroy the historic materials that characterize the property. New work shall be differentiated from old work and shall be compatible with massing, sizing, scale, and architectural features. Distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques, or example of craftsmanship, should be preserved. At this point, if there are no further questions regarding this proposal, do I hear a motion recommending Borough Council approve the application as presented? Is there a motion? Yes. Suzanne motions. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Clem seconds. At one point, though, I do want to have just quick discussion. Gary, I am recommending that you explore alternate cladding material for the building. I'm not requiring it on the application, but I appreciate it. At that point, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate your time tonight. I'll pass that down to you. And at this point, we will move to item A, administrative approval since last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
Yeah, continue.
One pressure washer installed. I would like to comment that over by High Street by us, Allen B. Roofing was working on a house that had a slate roof. They managed to take off half of that slate roof, fix the roof, and put the slate back on the house with new copper drip edge and trim. It's that little gray one, kitty corner from us over there. I can't say that I've seen some.
It's the one on West High Street, right across the street from the little accountant's office.
Yeah.
It's in a row of.
Paul Kellett's?
What?
I don't think it's Paul. I think it's Buckheimer. He owns the.
There's a parking lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and then.
And then that one?
I think
Yes.
it might be a
Buckheister's
Kellett.
parking lot, and then the next one is the house.
Oh, I thought Kellett's on that.
He
think
might,
it's
but needless to
Kellett,
say, it was a restoration of a slate roof, which I have not seen Alan B. do that, and it came out really
We'll have to
good.
go down and check. I
Which
didn't know
for
it
an
was finished.
in-kind permit, which they were able to go to you, get a permit,
Well,
do
you were
the work.
concerned about that, I remember.
Yeah.
You said, I don't know if that's going to happen.
So yeah, I just want to comment that that is a nice thing. Now, I did see that the hospital, and I have to admit, when I came in tonight, I was looking on the map. They are doing a considerable amount of construction on the stone building at the corner of their property. And it looks as if it is within the historic district. That is
Talking
the
about 432 South Washington?
432.
Which one?
Is that on this list?
No.
No, it's the stone building that,
The old Wayside Flower Shop?
yes, back in the day.
I know they're like the pointing the.
Oh, that's the
Stone.
internal medicine.
You're right. So right now, they have scaffolding over there, so it appears that they are repointing the entire building. So I would have expected to see a request from them to do that, because it appears that they are in fact in the historic district.
If they're just repointing, it would probably be under administrative, but I'll have to double check and pull some
Yeah,
permits and see if they applied for one. If not, we'll give them a stop work order and request the application be submitted.
are there any other questions regarding the administrative approvals?
Not from me.
Well, at this time, is there a motion to approve the administrative approvals as submitted?
I so move.
Motion by Clem, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Suzanne. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Okay, that is there any, oh, you do have a report of the chair.
I was just gonna say, the Park Service would like to speak on our development project, but I think we already know that.
Okay. And it sounds like you're recommending they come to a borough workshop.
Yeah, if they want to speak about the project prior to council motion approval, then they could speak at the workshop or at that council meeting on the.
They also had, not just about tonight, they have some particular concerns about the zoning that's being redone.
And that would be addressed through
Right.
council or the planning commission.
Understood. And my understanding is they attended the planning meeting on Monday.
Believe so, yes.
I think they went to the council meeting on Tuesday, and then they came here tonight, so they are busy
They're staying
this
busy,
week.
yes.
Do you want to
Report
speak?
of staff?
I'd actually, would you want to discuss the new member that was appointed to the board?
Well, it's just, again, as I look to next year, and we had the vacancy now, they had asked me, the council, Judy Butterfield and, I'm thinking of Patty.
Patty Lawson, yeah, they're on the HR committee.
Pat Lawson, they were asking me, because I had made some, through my sons, just things that I thought I'd served long enough on HARB. And it's been a little unnerving when hearing aids don't work and I can't hear well and I'm trying to run a meeting. I just thought it's happening a lot. So I just indicated that I would maybe be thinking of leaving when my term's up in August of 2025. So they spent some time just interviewing 3 or 4 architects in the area, none of whom live in the borough. And they were trying to find that, and Joe gave them a yes, finally. He actually worked with me for a few years.
But to be clear, he now works for Snyder Design, correct?
They sort of have a partnership, but he's
Okay.
under the Snyder's Design.
But from an employment, he is no longer an employee of yours. He doesn't work as a contractor for you.
No.
There's no financial relationships
No.
between you two. Okay.
No, unfortunately, because I was hoping he was going to take over my practice at one time.
And you said that his earliest time he can sit is sometime in January, at the January.
He can attend the January meeting.
Okay.
He had
Deb.
conflicts through December.
Can you I'm sorry to interrupt, can you pull up the picture I just emailed you for fun?
Did you find it?
No, but I'm gonna find it. It's the last thing I do tonight.
I'm trying to get this meeting over
No,
as
go
quick as I
ahead.
can.
Just keep going. I can multitask
Okay.
beyond belief. So what are you saying, Gary?
I think his term,
I'm saying I hope I make it till August.
good for luck. Good luck.
How long would it
We'll
have
see.
been? When did you start
I don't want that to be
public?
I don't want to be saying actually that I'm definitely gone.
No, but you began when? When did you begin on HARB?
That's the 7-Eleven.
With the Eagle Hotel?
Oh.
I've seen those pictures.
Okay, and then pull up the next one. I'm looking for something else, but these are giant buildings downtown. It's just
They are.
interesting. I'm looking for something else. I just thought these would be super.
I don't have that one
You
yet.
don't have it? Okay.
Send and receive. You're probably not connected to wireless.
The other one came up.
Oh, and we can't make Deb multitask here. Do you have a report of the staff at all?
The only thing I have is don't forget about your training hours. Everybody's required to have 4. We did get 1 training hour each for the presenter that was here, I guess in October. Was it October? So just be cognizant of that. It is due by December 31st of this year. So I do send out links for different training through some different avenues. So just you see something that might work, just let me know and print out your certificates and,
And I would like to make one correction.
sure.
ADA searchability
Yes.
isn't a thing. Just a searchable document is
Cer-
what it
okay.
is.
I
So
was- yeah.
You get rid of the word ADA, because
Okay.
ADA means in the document that it has the alternate text to all of the images, so that if someone used a ADA compatible reader, it could successfully read and interpret the document.
Okay.
And that's what, at some point, we need
Yes.
to get to that point.
Yes.
But being able to go in and Control F on that
Yes.
document is incredible.
Yeah, we got that up. We still need to redo the entire document, but,
Correct. And the gentleman
at
that you were
least.
trying to contact is 102 years old.
oh my gosh.
And so while he still has a presence on the internet, I do not think he's working anymore.
Okay.
That's the one that makes me so angry when they talk about this impact
Yes.
that the new building's going to have on the train station. When you see that the parking garage and the hotel already abutted and surrounded, and we're not even close, you know, we have something like almost 55 feet or 60 feet break along the street.
To break up the massing. Absolutely, absolutely.
But I keep thinking, how is what we're proposing blocking the view of that train station?
I feel like people are, just have something in their craw and they just can't open their mind to
I
what.
think it's more about the business
We
side,
need
not so
to
much.
probably be a little,
Okay.
we're on
Oh, sorry.
TV.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm just,
All right.
no, I'm just saying, I get all sides of it. I see all sides of it.
So,
Yeah.
So at this point, we did staff, we have a section on here for public comment. Wes, is that why you're here? Thank you.
What's he here for?
The public comment. And if you could state your name, please.
Yeah, Wesley Heiser, 226 North Stratton Street, Gettysburg. I'm a homeowner in the Historic District. Been here quite a few times in front of this board. And I'm here because I observed and listened to the earlier section of public comment. And I do want to commend the board because you are forced to deal with, I was here in September when 255 South Washington Street was here the first time. And you are compelled to deal with messaging from people that may or may not be delivering you fact. Some of that is out of ignorance, and some of that is out of deceit. So I talk about process, facts, and law. You had two properties tonight that are going to good length to follow the process, even though it might not be easiest, it might not be the easiest thing for them. 217 North Stratton Street. I see that property all the time because it's across the street. And I remember when that property was in very bad condition. And I really commend that, Mr. Klein was here and, probably not exceptionally well familiar with this process, but did what he was supposed to do. In 64 West Middle Street, I was there the morning when fire showed out of the third floor window. And what an incredible effort to try to make that property back to what it should be. I do not know why the superintendent of the National Park Service that was here this evening commented that the Borough Council, when they passed that ordinance, did not have visual representations from the battlefield. I don't know why she would speak to that without any knowledge of that. That is not true. The Borough Council, which I was a member at that time and later president, absolutely had visuals prepared by a planning professional, Carly Marshall, from several locations on the battlefield that depicted the impact, or shall I say lack of impact, of those different elevations on the different sites, including Culp's Hill, Oak Ridge, and a whole number of other places. I would have to agree with many of the comments that were made by Mr. Schaefer, by Mrs. Noggle. Both of them were here for that process. Both of them reported things very accurately tonight, especially Susan Noggle, I would say, because we were on opposite sides of that argument. And she was a very honorable person, is a very honorable person to see that through and to reach what we felt was a compromise. The public comments against the project have generally not changed. Some of that was briefly alluded to a moment ago. I believe some of that is business motivated. There is a reality that if all these units are built, that will definitely impact the price points of other rentals within the borough of Gettysburg, and there's no doubt of that. And that, I believe, is a significant driver to some of the opposition of the project. Mr. Harrison, I did not know before this project was, before the zoning changes were made. Mr. Harrison, I still really do not know that well. I've met him a few times, a handful of times. We made the changes that we made to make the property buildable. He was accurate in his representations made here this evening. He obviously has been in the business of development for a long time, and he observed what exactly we observed, which was that essentially the building lot as it had not been buildable for some time. There were other folks that made some comments. I was a little surprised. There was a resident here that formerly resided at 45 East Stevens Street who made a comment that he was shocked at the construction that is being proposed when this was put up in 2018 in ordinance form, and we spent 18 months debating this. I would tell him I was shocked the morning I saw him put up a 2-story structure to the rear of 45 East Middle Street without HARB COA or as much as a building permit. So perhaps those in glass houses should not come to this meeting and throw stones. I try to stay out of people's business, but if you check out that 2-story structure at the rear, I don't know too much about electrical code, but I don't think Romex sticking out the back probably passes muster, Clem. So a lot of people do things without permits. They do things that they shouldn't. I appreciate the people that follow the process. I appreciate what you did with 255 South Washington Street. I don't, and Mr. Klein I'm sure doesn't, we don't have rental income to balance off of. We have our pay to deal with our homes. And certainly my project that I'm doing across the street from Mr. Klein is not, balanced by some sort of rental revenue. But we're doing it the right way, I believe. And I thank you for encouraging those people and kind of directing those individuals at 255 to also do things relatively the right way, even if they're sort of forced to do so. The process is such, in the past several years, probably the past 5 or 6 years, it has become, I think, much easier in terms of getting to the right places. Revisions in the building permit process here at the borough, compared to 15 years ago, direct you and funnel you to the right sets of applications. So candidly, anyone that is in that business, they should know that they have to speak to the government before they start making a bunch of alterations. And they should have known better. I appreciate your patience with the Gettysburg Station project, and your diligence. It is a large project. When we passed those incentives and we passed those zoning changes, it was with the expectation that HARB and the balance against HARB being very influential in the material choices and the architectural details of that structure. If there is any concern I have, and it sounds that they will have an ongoing dialogue back and forth of those details, it's that on such a large building, sometimes those details sort of get lost because it's such a grand scale of a project. But thank you for your work. I commend you. I know it's very thankless to be in these volunteer positions, especially if you have to sort through what people are telling you and whether it's fact or fiction. So, thank you.
Thank you. With that.
All right. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
We have to
Quick
do
update.
Wait, oops.
A couple months ago, the gentleman on Baltimore Hill who had 2 general stores, and between the 2 put like a little pavilion in there.
Strickland?
No, it wasn't Strickland. Goose Brothers Ice
Buck
Cream.
Heister for the ice cream shop.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So he had 2 buildings, mostly were white painted. He put in like a little pagoda in between
The
them.
pavilion that he put in.
Semi-permanent, semi-temporary type thing. It was wood color. He said we requested him to paint that. He did. That was painted last week, so it is painted white. So
Yeah. He put the foundation and everything in he was required to do. Look okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
I noticed it with the wood.
it blends more with the 2
Yeah,
other
it just
buildings that
disappears.
were basically white. So it's been done.
Motion to adjourn.
Who's making the
Motion to adjourn,
I'll move.
second, again, 2 motions to adjourn. Everybody's voted.
Long meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Deb, just to reiterate,